When it gets cold and snowy in the northern hemisphere, there's nothing better than cozying up with your favorite Christmas video game. Yes, just you and maybe some loved ones, a mug of something warm and wholesome, and the flickering blue glow of your TV as you hunker down under a blanket, controller in hand. But out of all the classic Christmas games out there, to me, none of them can quite top what may be one of the greatest overlooked survival horror games of all time, and one of my favorite forgotten gems, Parasite Eve. Oh, you didn't know that it was a Christmas game? Well, let me tell you, this classic action RPG is packed with more holiday spirit than even Die Hard. So,
Yippee-ki-yay, motherfucker.
Parasite Eve, the video game, is actually the sequel to the 1995 novel of the same name by Hidetaki Sena. Sena was an undergrad pharmacology student at the prestigious Tohoku University when he wrote the Parasite Eve novel, and his background in microbiology shines through in both the book and the game. Unlike its J-horror contemporaries that often focus on ghosts and folklore, the Parasite Eve novel laid down some unique sci-fi and body horror concepts that were also prominent in the game. Namely, how the mitochondria that exists in the cells of all living things on Earth are actually a sentient, demonic life form of unknown origin. And after lying in wait for millions of years, they have begun to take over their hosts. At the center of this invasion of the body snatchers is the embodiment of the mitochondria, Eve, who can control or kill any living being by manipulating their mitochondria. It sounds like a ridiculous and over-the-top concept, but there is more than one grain of truth here rooted in real science. It is believed that mitochondria were indeed a separate organism that evolved symbiotically alongside life on Earth, and eventually became incorporated into the natural biology of all living things. After all, the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the are the powerhouse of the cell. It's plural. The character Eve in the novel is named after the so-called mitochondrial Eve, who is theorized to be the African woman from whom all humans are descended. These pop science references present in the book made their way into the game, including one memorable monologue from Richard Dawkins' famous 1976 book on evolution, The Selfish Gene. Like the novel, Parasite Eve the game tells a smaller and more personal detective story for most of its runtime, before finally ramping up to an epic conclusion. The player fills the shoes of rookie NYPD officer Aya Brea, a strong-willed 20-something who's still just learning the ropes. On Christmas Eve in 1997 in New York City, Aya and her unnamed escort attend an opera at Carnegie Hall. And her date proves to be a completely useless coward when all hell breaks loose, but he does get to be the butt of a great early character building for our fearless protagonist. When all of a sudden, the lead singer's aria causes the entire audience to spontaneously combust in an orgy of grisly death, Aya is thrust into an apocalyptic race against the mitochondria threat, as the NYPD attempts to track down the source of the mysterious and otherworldly outbreak. It's a detective story with clear stakes and an immediate emotional hook, which does a great job of drawing the player in and keeping your attention as you dig deeper into the mystery. Parasite Eve's mechanics are a satisfying blend of action and RPG, with a turn-based combat system similar to Chrono Trigger or Vagrant Story. Parasite Eve's sphere-based 3D combat system also required a good degree of strategic thinking to overcome enemy resistances or exploit their weaknesses. The game no doubt informed and inspired the development of Vagrant Story, which came out 2 years later and has a similar but greatly expanded gameplay system. I actually made a video on it a couple months back, so if you're interested, check the link in the description. Along with these excellent and engaging mechanics, there is a surprising depth to the ways you can customize Aya's loadout and add special abilities and bonus effects to her guns and gear, which can give you a serious edge in battle. There's also a limited magic system of offensive and defensive spells called Parasite Energy that adds another tactical layer to the mechanics. The game greatly rewards this kind of player experimentation to the point where you can completely break the difficulty and steamroll every enemy. But you'll need that edge if you plan to beat the Chrysler Building, the 77-floor post-game secret dungeon, and see the true ending. The presentation, not just for its time, is top-notch. The game's art style and character design still look expressive and charming, and the soundtrack features some extremely engaging melodies that mix trance electronica with operatic vocals. It's clear that there was both money and care invested in the creation of this game. Parasite Eve is a time capsule from when Square was still flush with cash from Final Fantasy VII and therefore willing to take a chance on slightly unconventional concepts. It's a shame that this willingness to bet on something different is less common in the game industry today, because when these kinds of games do actually make it to release, they usually end up being some of the most special experiences out there. Just wanting to say thank you for Nier Automata, Square. Parasite Eve shows just how weird and inventive the still young survival horror genre could be at that time, right down to how the Christmas time setting of a near-empty metropolis gives the game a kind of lonely, sorrowful feel perfect for a horror game. And despite the clear influences of Resident Evil, Parasite Eve's strong art direction and clever use of RPG mechanics make it a truly memorable and unique experience. It's also hard to talk about this game without equally mentioning the hallmark of late 1990s and early 2000s Squaresoft, their legendary CGI cutscenes. While many of Square's games are famous for their CGI work, Parasite Eve in particular features many striking sequences of suspense, action, and body horror, as well as some scenes that are just weird. But a good weird, if you ask me. It's been nearly 20 years since Parasite Eve came out, and these cutscenes do show their age quite a bit. But it's important to remember that at this time, Square was considered perhaps the greatest CGI studio in the world, surpassing sometimes even Pixar in terms of sheer technical wizardry. Many of Parasite Eve's stages and cutscenes overtly reference a visual language of blockbuster Hollywood cinema. And this was right around the time that Square started having blockbuster aspirations for their games, and they wanted you to know they could go toe-to-toe with the best that Western entertainment had to offer. That same larger-than-life experience of the cutscenes is matched by the immersive attention to detail in both the setting, the art style, and the mechanics. And all of these smaller details, the deep game systems, the consistently strong art direction, the pop science flourishes, combine to become truly greater than the sum of their parts. The game lovingly recreates or reinterprets real-world locations in New York City, recasting the empty city as a stage upon which this tale of horror plays out. The story even frames this theme by starting out in a theater and then returning to that setting late in the game. In many ways, Parasite Eve is an ideal game for someone who isn't necessarily a fan of RPGs, or a fan of survival horror, or even both. Compared to its contemporaries, it's far less opaque than the original Resident Evil and much more accessible than epic RPG like Final Fantasy VIII, for instance. A perfect mitochondrial synthesis, if I might say so. It's also quite short by 1990s RPG standards. You'll have it finished in between 12 to 15 hours. Upon release, the game actually took quite a hit in reviews for being on the short side. But honestly, nowadays, a well-executed RPG that tells its story in under 20 hours sounds just like heaven for a busy adult with a full schedule. Parasite Eve was just popular enough on the PlayStation to get a Greatest Hits re-release, and there's an emulated version of the game available for download on PS3, so it is pretty easy to get a copy. That is, if you're in NTSC regions. If you're in PAL regions, I've sadly got bad news for you, pal. Get it? The game is a forgotten gem in every sense of the phrase. Square Enix seemingly has no interest in doing anything with this cult classic series, and that is a shame, because while the game's 2 sequels each had their own appeal in some way, nothing has ever really matched the first Parasite Eve's unique blend of systems, story, and setting. But at least, we'll always have one of the best classic survival horror titles, and maybe the greatest Christmas game of all time in our library. So I hope with this video, I could make Parasite Eve a little less of a forgotten gem. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this little excursion into video game Oblivion. This game was selected because you suggested it, so if you happen to have a suggestion for a game that you think needs to be covered in Forgotten Gems, let me know in the comments section and add #GemSuggestions. A thank you goes out to all the people who support me on Patreon. If you're interested in supporting this channel, please consider pitching in and following the link to my Patreon in the description. This time, a special thanks goes out to these top-tier supporters: Asel Markussen, John Boring, Quentin Podom, Thwagam, Nicolas Sorosa Puch, Travis Deng, Evan Tekre, Kiris Darhaku, Adam Burr, Gary G-Man Matsuko, Sreliata, Liam Jones, Lucas, Mura Casardis, James Lynch, Robin Clausen, Aaron Doodles, Cleish Hie, Garrett Lathy, Vida Daly, Ian Oblivion, Malin, Matt Davis, Julia, David Nadeau, The Melting Squad, Simon Tjomsland, Sean Quigley, Sean Holiday, Angrim, Roman Vasenmüller, Nathan DeGrand, Alex Lake, Carlos Spilari, Siri Agneth Eliasson, Agustin Ortega, Jason Johns, Brant Rupert, Morrigan, Maxwell Brown, Subject Matter Games, Max Herbert, Nolani Telemoni, Joseph Jones, David Zelenak, Karl Jura, Martin Schmidt, Konrad Kurze, Brian Vieira, Adam Cross, Matthew Daly, Sonny Mellard, Michael Spina IV, Travis Leneve, Jordan Farrell, Dennis Pfefferkorn, Mr. Bergadon, Matthias Fowler, Decim, Rational User, Philip Kirchner, Midorino, Chase Ladner, Pascal Fähling, Milan Vujnovic, Yasin Inat, Andrei Kriakushin, Sebastian Garcia, Jacob Woodward, Dimitri Pirak, Denny Sendel, Thiago Pereira dos Santos Silva, Carlos Vega, Marisa Martinez, Adel Al-Falasi, and Nicholas Stevenson. Until next time, ta-ta for now.